If your life feels stuck, repetitive, or underwhelming, it's probably not because you lack potential. It's because you've organized your life around emotional comfort. You avoid discomfort. You delay hard decisions. You choose what feels good now over what builds strength later. And the longer you protect your feelings, the more expensive that choice becomes. This video isn't here to inspire you emotionally. It's here to challenge you to take responsibility for the direction of your life, starting now. Emotional comfort delays responsibility because it creates the illusion that time is on your side. When you prioritize feeling okay in the present, you subconsciously convince yourself that serious action can wait, that there will be a better moment, more clarity, more motivation later. Comfort becomes a buffer between you and reality. It softens the urgency of change and dulls the signals that something is wrong. The problem is that responsibility does not disappear when ignored. It only gets postponed, and postponed responsibility rarely returns in a manageable form. It grows heavier, more complex, and more demanding the longer it's avoided. What makes emotional comfort dangerous is that it doesn't feel like failure. It feels reasonable. You rest instead of training. You delay the conversation. You avoid the risk. You tell yourself you're protecting your mental health, staying balanced, or waiting for the right conditions. But beneath that justification is a subtle trade being made. Short-term emotional ease in exchange for long-term consequences. Each time you choose comfort over responsibility, you reinforce the habit of avoidance. That habit shapes how you respond to pressure, how much trust you place in yourself, and how seriously you take your own standards. Over time, this pattern compounds into regret, not dramatic regret, but quiet regret, the kind that surfaces late at night when distractions fade. You start noticing how many chances you let pass, how many skills you didn't develop, how many problems you knew were coming but chose not to face. Regret doesn't usually come from doing something difficult and failing. It comes from knowing you avoided what you were capable of handling. Emotional comfort delays growth, and growth delayed is opportunity lost. And opportunities don't wait patiently. They move on to those willing to tolerate discomfort. Responsibility requires accepting friction. It means acting before you feel ready, calm, or confident. Emotional comfort resists that. It encourages emotional permission before action, teaching you to wait for the right mood instead of building the discipline to act regardless of mood. As years pass, the gap widens between who you are and who you could have been. That gap is not created by lack of talent or intelligence, but by accumulated moments of avoidance. Each comfortable choice seems small, but together they shape the trajectory of a life, quietly determining outcomes long before you notice the direction has changed. Discipline is the ability to act correctly without waiting for emotional alignment, because emotions are unstable and unreliable as guides for meaningful action. Feelings change with sleep, stress, environment, and mood, yet the demands of life remain constant. Work still needs to be done. Health still requires maintenance. Responsibilities still exist whether you feel prepared or not. When action depends on emotional permission, progress becomes inconsistent by default. You move forward only when conditions feel favorable, and that guarantees uneven results over time. Most people misunderstand discipline as intensity or harshness, but it is neither. Discipline is structure. It is the decision to obey standards instead of impulses. It removes negotiation from daily behavior. When you no longer ask yourself how you feel about doing what needs to be done, you conserve mental energy and reduce friction. The task becomes automatic, not dramatic. This is why disciplined people often appear calm rather than motivated. They are not relying on emotion to initiate action. They are relying on commitment. Acting correctly without emotional permission does not mean ignoring emotions or suppressing them. It means refusing to grant them veto power over behavior. You can feel tired and still train. You can feel uncertain and still take the step. You can feel resistance and still follow through. Each time you do, you send yourself a clear signal that your actions are governed by principle, not comfort. That signal strengthens self-trust, which is far more valuable than temporary motivation. When discipline is absent, emotions take control of the schedule. Productivity becomes sporadic. Health becomes optional. Growth becomes conditional. Over time, this creates a fragile lifestyle that collapses under stress. The moment life becomes difficult, performance drops because there is no system in place to carry you forward. Discipline solves this by creating reliability. It ensures that progress continues even when circumstances are imperfect. The skill of discipline is developed through repetition, not inspiration. You practice acting correctly on days when it feels unnecessary, boring, or uncomfortable. You follow through when no one is watching and when there is no immediate reward. Over time, the behavior becomes identity. You stop needing emotional permission because action is no longer a debate. It becomes a default response to responsibility, pressure, and challenge. Avoiding discomfort weakens resilience because resilience is not an idea or a mindset. It is a capacity that is built through repeated exposure to difficulty. When you consistently choose the easiest option, you train your nervous system and your habits to expect low resistance. Over time, even moderate pressure begins to feel overwhelming, not because it is objectively unbearable, but because you have not practiced carrying weight. Just like muscles atrophy without load, psychological and physical resilience decline when discomfort is avoided. Discomfort is the training ground for pressure. It teaches you how to stay functional when conditions are imperfect, when energy is low, when outcomes are uncertain. By avoiding these conditions, you lose familiarity with stress, and unfamiliar stress always feels heavier than it actually is. Small challenges begin to feel like threats. Minor setbacks feel catastrophic. The world does not become harsher. Your tolerance becomes narrower. This is how people end up feeling constantly overwhelmed by ordinary demands. The shrinking of pressure capacity happens quietly. It doesn't announce itself with failure. It shows up as hesitation, procrastination, and the urge to escape. You start managing life by minimizing discomfort rather than building competence. You avoid hard conversations. You delay necessary effort. You seek distractions when focus is required. Each avoidance reinforces the belief that discomfort is dangerous rather than manageable. That belief shapes behavior more powerfully than logic ever could. Resilience grows when you stay present in discomfort long enough to learn that it does not destroy you. When you experience difficulty and survive it intact, your internal reference point shifts. You become less reactive, less fragile, more capable of holding steady under pressure. But if you remove yourself at the first sign of unease, you deny yourself that recalibration. Pressure remains unfamiliar, and unfamiliar pressure always feels threatening. Capacity for pressure determines how far you can go in life. Careers, relationships, health, and personal growth all involve sustained effort under stress. When discomfort is avoided, these areas stagnate, not because opportunity disappears, but because the internal capacity to carry responsibility has been reduced. You end up living beneath your potential, not due to lack of intelligence or ambition, but due to an underdeveloped tolerance for strain. Avoidance feels protective in the short term, but in the long term it narrows your world, limiting what you can handle, pursue, and sustain. Self-control, both physical and mental, is not something that appears when motivation strikes, because motivation is temporary and unpredictable. It rises and falls based on mood, environment, and circumstance. When people rely on motivation, their behavior becomes inconsistent by design. They act when they feel inspired and stop when resistance appears. This creates the false belief that self-control is a personality trait rather than a trainable skill. In reality, self-control is developed the same way strength is developed, through repeated exposure to resistance. Resistance is the moment when you want to stop but choose not to. It is the decision to continue when comfort is available and temptation is close. Every time you resist an impulse, you strengthen your ability to regulate behavior. This applies to physical habits like training, nutrition, and sleep, and equally to mental habits like focus, emotional regulation, and delayed gratification. The act itself may feel small, but the effect compounds. Each resisted impulse slightly increases your future capacity to resist the next one. Mental self-control is especially shaped by repetition. When you practice staying focused despite boredom, staying calm despite irritation, or staying disciplined despite fatigue, you teach your mind that discomfort is not a command. You stop reacting automatically and begin choosing responses deliberately. Over time, this reduces internal chaos. Thoughts become less intrusive. Emotions become less controlling. The mind learns that it does not need to escape discomfort immediately. Physical self-control reinforces this process. The body becomes a training ground for discipline. Waking up when you don't feel like it, training when energy is low, eating correctly when convenience tempts you otherwise, these actions create behavioral integrity. The body learns obedience to structure rather than impulse. This spills into other areas of life, making it easier to focus, work consistently, and follow through under pressure. Motivation feels powerful, but it requires no strength. Resistance requires effort. and effort builds capacity. When you consistently choose resistance over relief, you develop a quiet confidence that does not depend on mood. You trust yourself because you have evidence that you can hold the line when it matters. Over time, self-control stops feeling like struggle and starts feeling like identity, shaped by thousands of small decisions made correctly in moments when motivation was absent. Consistency beats intensity because results that matter are built through accumulation, not emotional surges. Intensity is appealing because it feels productive and dramatic. It creates the sense that something significant is happening right now. But intensity is usually unsustainable. It depends on energy, excitement, and favorable conditions. When those fade, behavior collapses. Consistency, on the other hand, is quiet. It lacks drama. It asks for repetition, even when progress is slow and invisible. This is why it produces results that last. When results matter over years, the real challenge is not effort, but endurance. Anyone can work hard for a short period. Few people can show up reliably without immediate rewards. Consistency trains you to respect the process instead of chasing emotional feedback. You stop measuring progress by how you feel and start measuring it by whether the work was done. This shift removes mood from the equation and replaces it with standards. Standards don't fluctuate, moods do. Intensity often disguises avoidance. People go all in for a short burst, then stop entirely when the effort becomes uncomfortable or boring. This cycle creates the illusion of commitment without the discipline of continuity. Over time, it leads to frustration and self-doubt because the promised results never arrive. Consistency avoids this trap by making progress inevitable. Small actions, repeated daily, compound into skills, health, and credibility that cannot be rushed. Long-term growth requires tolerance for monotony. Most meaningful work is repetitive. Training the body, building a skill, improving focus, and maintaining health all demand routine. Consistency teaches you to operate effectively in that routine. You learn to act without novelty, without applause, and without constant validation. This builds internal stability, which intensity can never provide. When you commit to consistency, you reduce the need for constant decision-making. The question shifts from whether you feel like doing the work to whether today is a day you follow your process. This simplification protects progress during difficult periods. Life becomes unpredictable, but your behavior remains reliable. Over years, this reliability creates trust in yourself and from others. Results that matter are the outcome of thousands of ordinary days handled correctly. Consistency ensures those days count, regardless of mood or circumstance. Intensity may feel impressive, but it fades quickly. Consistency endures, quietly shaping outcomes long after emotion has passed. Truth-based self-improvement begins with an honest assessment of what you are willing to live with, not what you wish would change someday. Hope is easy to hold because it demands nothing immediately. You can hope for better habits, better circumstances, or a better version of yourself without altering your behavior. Tolerance, on the other hand, is active. What you tolerate defines the boundaries of your life. It reveals the standards you actually live by, not the ones you claim to value. Improvement only becomes real when those tolerated conditions are examined without excuses. Many people focus on future goals while ignoring present realities. They talk about what they want to become while continuing to accept environments, habits, and relationships that contradict that vision. This creates a split between intention and action. Truth-based improvement closes that gap by forcing alignment. If something is being tolerated, it is being chosen. That choice may not be conscious, but it is still a choice. Recognizing this removes the comfort of denial and replaces it with responsibility. Confronting what you tolerate is uncomfortable because it exposes patterns you have rationalized for years. It means acknowledging wasted time, unmanaged health, weak boundaries, or repeated avoidance. It means admitting that certain outcomes are not the result of bad luck, but of repeated acceptance. This level of honesty can feel destabilizing, but it is also clarifying. Once you see what you tolerate, you can no longer pretend you are powerless. Hope becomes dangerous when it replaces action. It allows people to delay change while maintaining the illusion of progress. Truth-based self-improvement strips that illusion away. It asks simple, difficult questions. What are you allowing that is costing you energy, focus, or self-respect? What problems keep repeating because you refuse to address them directly? These questions do not ask about dreams or potential. They ask about behavior. When you stop tolerating what undermines you, improvement becomes practical. Standards rise naturally. Boundaries become clearer. Discipline stops feeling forced because it is now defending something you respect. Growth accelerates not through optimism, but through the refusal to accept conditions that contradict the life you claim to want. Hope has its place, but truth is what produces movement, and confronting tolerance is where that movement begins. Comfort will keep offering you reasons to wait, soften standards, and stay where you are. Responsibility will never feel convenient, but it will always be honest. If you want the next chapter of your life to look different, your daily behavior has to change first. Drop the need for emotional permission. Raise your standards. Do the work consistently, especially when no one is watching. The future isn't decided by what you intend to do. It's shaped by what you're willing to do repeatedly, even when it's uncomfortable.